Hey everyone, it's Gary here from Echidna Sewing, and today I want to talk to you about one of the most commonly asked questions with respect to machine embroidery, and that is, why does my outline not line up with my design? And I'm sure if you're an embroiderer, you've been doing it for a long time, you've had this happen to you. You know, you get through most of the stitch out on the design, then you put the last color on, or whatever the outline color is going to be, and it just doesn't line up correctly. And often there's an easy fix to that. Sometimes it can be because the design isn't digitized correctly, but more often than not it's a technique issue, and we're going to show you exactly how to avoid that. First thing you're going to see though is three design stitch outs that we've done. The first one I'm going to show you is actually a little clown design, and this clown design, to be honest, is not a real high quality design. I don't know where it came from, but you'll notice that there's lots of errors on the design. The registration isn't right, and that's what we call the term that we use when your outlines don't line up. It's called design registration, and you'll see down on his feet it's not lined up correctly, around his mouth it's not lined up correctly. Just wherever there's little arrows pointing, you'll see it's just not correct. And to be honest, this design, I know because I've looked at it, is badly digitized. They haven't applied any pull compensation to it, and no matter what I do to that design, it is never going to stitch correctly. So that's an example of something that can't be saved. So let's have a look at the second image. It's a crab design out of one of our design ranges, and the second image, you'll notice where the little red arrows are pointing, a similar problem. The registration doesn't appear right. So those red arrows are pointing to the areas where there's just not correct design registration, and you wouldn't be happy with that result. But I know this is a good design and I know it stitches correctly. So have a look at design, or the image number 3, and you'll see that there's no faults with it at all. It's stitched perfectly, and that's the result that you'd be looking for. So let's have a chat about how we can make that happen. Okay, so we're going to now discuss what you would do to stop the design registration or the outline registration from not working correctly. Now, it's very important to understand you've got to start with a good quality design. You can't save a bad quality design no matter how hard you try. The next thing is we've got to make sure we choose the right stabilizers, and that's probably where most people fall down. You've got to prevent the fabric from slipping and moving in the hoop. You've got to provide enough support for the design to stitch correctly, and you certainly don't want to stretch the fabric or have it too loosely hooped. So we're going to discuss what I think is the best way to get a perfect result every time, pretty much regardless of what fabric you're going to be stitching on. And what I've done to successfully stitch the crab design that of course we showed you in those illustrations is I've used our Soft-Away fusible tearaway, which is an amazing product that we sell, and we fuse that onto the fabric, and then I've also used another layer of Soft-Away in the hoop with that. And then I'm going to show you another little tip. But first of all, let's have a look at the Soft-Away stabilizer and how we would go about pressing that onto the fabric. What I like to do whenever I'm pressing any fabric is make sure that I give it a decent press first. Some people will use starches and so on, and that's fine if you like using a starch. I'm not sure that it's always necessary, but if it works for you, then do it. But I just give the fabric a quick press to make sure that it's nice and flat. Now, the stabilizer, as I said, I'm using a fusible Soft-Away. Now, Soft-Away is a wet laid tearaway, but it doesn't perforate when you're embroidering. It tears easily, but doesn't perforate, and the design doesn't fall out of it. You might see, in fact, you'll see in a little image we're going to show you in a moment, that there's a glossy side on this product, and that's the side with the glue on it that you'll press down onto the fabric. So when I'm pressing it down, I put my fabric down, I put my Soft-Away on top, and I don't want a super hot iron. In fact, if you've got one of our ironing systems, the 140 degrees temperature on the iron is perfect. I don't need steam. I just need to give that a nice firm press all over. Don't overheat it. That's a mistake people make with iron-on stabilizers. If you put too much heat for too long, you basically destroy the stabilizer. The glue just disappears. So I'm just applying this perfectly set iron at 140 degrees Celsius, a good bit of pressure, and I'm not steaming. And that is now attached really, really well. Now the benefit of using a soft away stabilizer, a fusible stabilizer, is I can't stretch the fabric now because the stabilizer won't stretch, and that's a mistake a lot of people make when they're hooping, is they pull the fabric too tight. It needs to be taut or firm, but it doesn't need to be drum tight. You can stretch fabric and it will give you issues when you're embroidering. So then we have to make sure that we always use preferably the smallest hoop you can for the job that you're about to do. Now these little crab designs that I'm stitching are about 120 by 120 mil, in which case I would be using my 130 by 180 hoop, which is this one here. Now here's the best little tip, and I reckon if you do this you'll pretty much eliminate all your embroidery issues when it comes to registration not lining up. I like to put the 6mm acid-free double-sided tape around the inner ring of the hoop. Now you probably can see this, we'll show you a little close-up in a minute, but I've already placed this tape around there, and to do that all I do is I just simply take the 6mm roll and just start pushing it around the tape. I've already applied it, so I don't need to, around the hoop. I've already applied this, I don't need to do it again, but that you get the general idea, and you just put that all the way around the inner ring of the hoop. Not underneath it, all around the inner ring, the perimeter of the inner ring. And once I've done that, I just peel the tape back and paper off. I don't need that anymore. And now I've got this kind of tacky edge around the hoop. You can reuse this multiple times, sometimes up to 10 applications. Make sure that your hoop is open far enough so as you've got an accommodating amount of room in the hoop to actually get the ring in. Again, some people will tell you you should never tighten this screw once you've hooped up the fabric. I don't always prescribe to that theory. A turn or two does not hurt. If your hoop is too loose and you've got to tighten it 5 or 6 turns, then that's probably not the right way to do it. You will end up with a bit of a bubble in the fabric. So what I'm going to do now is hoop the piece of fabric I've got, and because this is a fairly big stitch count design, 29,000 stitches, I'm also going to use another layer of standard soft away, and this is the non-fusible layer, and I'm going to put that in the hoop with the fabric. I then place my outer ring underneath there, and we grab our inner ring, presuming you've already marked where you want your design to stitch, and I like to generally work from the top and come down, or the bottom and move up. So you'll notice here that I've actually pushed here down at the top of the hoop, and I'm going to work my way down here till I get to the bottom of the hoop, and I've just pushed that in nice and firmly, and I can tell you now that that is hooped beautifully. I've got maybe a little bit of a turn on the screw, not much, but I can guarantee you that that fabric is not going to move, and you're going to get a perfect stitch out provided you've started with a reasonable design in the first instance. So that technique will just about get anything embroidered for you. If I was stitching on a knit fabric, I'm still inclined to use the soft away tearaway as my first layer, but I may then put a layer of cutaway underneath that as well. The theory there is that cutaway will give you longevity in the design, and as knit fabrics are not as stable, that extra little bit of stabilizer from the cutaway will give you more wearability, it'll handle better laundering, etc., and give you a more long-lasting result. So that's the little technique, and that's how we got this amazing registration correct on this crab design that I've got here. And there's also an article, you can read all about it on our website as well. And in fact, it was in our most recent newsletter. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, give us a call, but it's soft away, tear away, the fusible version, and the 6mm double-sided tape. They're the products you want. Cheers.